What's up, YouTube? It's the Action Figure Grader coming back to you with another vintage collection market update. I just did one, but there's been a lot of interesting information that's popped up here recently as it relates to the Haslab Ghost, and more importantly, as it relates to my channel, which really the only reason you guys watch my channel for the most part is because of my price guides. And there were a lot of really interesting vintage collection sales that all happened after I made the video that you just saw a couple of days ago. So I wanted to go through those. Most of them are graded, which is weird because usually there's not that many graded sales for the vintage collection. And most of you that seem to collect the vintage collection don't like the graded stuff. But because I had so much that popped up and finished on eBay, in addition to some recent information on Instagram and as it relates to the Haslab Ghost, I wanted to go through that. So first of all, let's take a look at the photos. I'm not a big breaking news guy, okay? I'm sure this has been covered at length. But because I'm going to be covering where we are with the Haslab Ghost backings, I did want to show the recent photos that Hasbro released for kind of the finished deco and paint job for the Ghost. And look how awesome this looks. I mean, I wish I had the space for this thing. I really did. The interior is pretty incredible. I love the little tag right there on the seat. Everything about what they've done with this vehicle is just, it's pretty incredible. It's just an amazing piece of engineering that Hasbro has put together. And this is a great photo here showing all of the Rebels except for Chopper and Sabine Wren, but pretty awesome. And the big question is what's going to happen and whether the 17,000 backers is going to happen or not, right? And here's where we are as of the making of this video on the 16th. It looks like we're getting pretty close to unlocking Ezra Bridger. And have you seen me? That's what I had. I had that missing milk thing with, you know, that like we grew up with in the 1980s. And it seems like it's taking a lot longer than expected to get to 11,000 backers for Ezra Bridger. But it looks like it's going to happen fairly soon because at least as of the making of this video, we stand at about 10,444 in terms of the backers. So 21 days, 9 hours, 12 minutes left. And we'll see if the rest of those tiers are hit. Now, I want to go back to Riv's Junctionite for a second. I did cover this briefly, so I'm only going to talk about it for a second. I covered this in the Patreon exclusive live stream, and you guys can go back and watch that stream if you want to. It's live, or the replay is available on my channel. And I did spend a little bit of time on this, but I thought it was an interesting graph that showed the green, which is the Razor Crest backings by day, versus the blue, which is the Ghost backings by day. And the big reason that the Ghost seems to be lagging behind in terms of the number of backers versus the Razor Crest is, for whatever reason, on Mondays, the Razor Crest always had these big bumps. So you can see that Monday there and this Monday here, where they had huge numbers of daily backers, almost 400 for the first Monday. And then on this Monday, it went over 400. So, and if you look at the Ghost, that has not happened. It's been more kind of consistent daily with no surges on those Mondays. So, Riv's Junctionite, I don't know this person, but he always has really good graph and data information as it relates to the Ghost and how it's tracking. So go follow him or her on Instagram. He also did have another recent kind of graph that I wanted to go through in more detail that I've not covered on the channel. And he says, we've got 3 solid weeks of the Ghost campaign under our belt. As you can see, it's still pacing pretty well with the Razor Crest. It is definitely behind the Razor Crest total by 1,300 units, but it's double what the Rancor had at this point. He's talking about the Black Series Rancor, which, so what? I mean, you know, to me, that's not really a comparable item because the Rancor didn't get backed, and it's Black Series versus Vintage Collection, so I don't even know if that's really necessarily that much of a highlight. So things are going well. I used 2 methods of projection this week. First, I projected based on the shape of the Razor Crest curve and the percentage of total backers at this point. He said that's going to get you to about 25,000 backers. And there's a big assumption, though. There's a big assumption that you're going to have a big surge at the very end of the Haslab campaign for the Ghost, and because that's what happened with the Razor Crest. And the question is that going to happen? So I don't know. I don't know if you're really going to see that. As has already been pointed out by a number of you, the price is higher. We've got a little bit more uncertain economic times. Inflation's hitting everybody's pocketbook. Credit card debt is at an all-time high in the U.S. at least. So are people going to have this kind of money to back the Ghost? And, you know, it does seem like people are waiting to see if the other tiers get unlocked before they agree to back it. So it's kind of a chicken or the egg, right? Is it going to happen or not? So that's his first projection. He says he's expecting 25,000. He was expecting 26,000. So he's dropped that number down just based on those Monday bumps that you see for the green on that graph. And then finally he says the percentage of the backers to the crest backers has fallen steadily since we've started. So he's talking about how the Ghost is tracking versus the Razor Crest. And he says that this projects will still end up with 72% of the Razor Crest total, or about 20,000 units. So he's expecting somewhere between 20 and 25, which is a big range. But it's important because even if it falls in at the lower end of that range, it still falls above that 17,000 backer number for that tier unlock for Zeb Aurelius. So he says it's going to be somewhere in between those two numbers. The question is, are they going to offer up a Sabine Wren repaint before the end of this campaign to say, hey, if you get to 21,000, we'll also throw in Sabine, Hasbro? So anyway, who knows? The other big question that he does bring up that we've talked about is what happens in a week and a half when we get our first look at the new Ahsoka show. Will that cause a surge in the last week like we saw with the Razor Crest? Time will tell. And, you know, how much will the Ghost be featured in the new Ahsoka series? If you looked at the trailers, obviously they did show it. But is that really going to play into collectors' decisions to back it or not? And I don't know. It does seem like we're in a different time period than we were during season 1 of The Mandalorian. When The Mandalorian came out, season 1, I feel like the collecting space was a lot different than it is right now. We've had so many shows since then that Disney has put out that have been mediocre, with the exception of Andor. That is their collecting fatigue. You know, we talk about collecting fatigue all the time. So, anyway, I think that's probably enough on the Haslab Ghost. But again, if you don't follow Riv's Junction Night, he always puts out these weekly kind of campaign updates, and I try to cover them on here because he puts so much work into them that I'm hoping he'll get some followers on Instagram. And again, I don't know this person at all. I just like the information he puts out. He thinks like me. He talks like me with all these data and graphs and numbers and number crunching. So I just appreciate the fact that he's taking the time to do all that. Let's dig into some sales. Here was a not beat up, but I had some dings, as you can see in the top of the card. Original issue, unpunched Ahsoka. And this is probably the lowest price I've seen in a little while. This one sold at an auction for $107.50. Again, not perfect. You can see the big ding there by the warning label. But rest of the card looked good. Blister looked good. And another example that the price keeps falling. Although, you know, it did have that big ugly sticker on the back by the proof of purchase. Some light edge wear to it. So this is probably like 80 grade condition at best. But $107.50, I mean, that's even lower than some of the others we've seen here recently. $150-ish in the last video is kind of the lowest I've seen for an unpunched original issue Ahsoka. But $107.50 if you're willing to live with some dings on that one. Now let's dig into some graded items. There were a bunch of TVC graded, and I know that some of you don't like the graded TVC, but I want to show it because there's a lot of good data out there, and the prices, people, were really shocking on the upper end for the most part. Here was an uncirculated 9.5 grade Ahsoka Mandalore, so very, very high grade. That one sold for $140 plus $10 shipping. That's about as high as you can get, really, with AFA. I mean, I've only seen a handful of 9.75s, and maybe one or two in the history of everything I've ever looked at, AFA 100s or AFA 10s. So an AFA 9.5 is really, you know, practically speaking, about the highest grade you can get for one of these items. And $140 plus $10 shipping, pretty good deal in an auction. Next up was an uncirculated 9.25 carbonized Mandalorian. This is the Walmart exclusive, tough to get in an uncirculated designation. And I think that's kind of be the running theme for a lot of the items I'm covering, is that it seems like people are still paying up big money for the uncirculated designation. That's you know, uncirculated just means that it came straight from a Hasbro factory sealed shipping box, sent directly to AFA or whoever graded it, and they opened the box and then graded each of the individual items inside. So that's what the uncirculated designation means. It just means it has never been touched by hands other than the factory that assembled it and then the grader. So to me, some of the premiums are a little high for my taste, but there are collectors out there that are willing to pay that uncirculated designation premium. And this one sold for $157.50. Perfect example of that. I mean, I sold one for $100, and this one sold for a good solid 50% higher because of the uncirculated designation. Here's an uncirculated 9.0 foil Darth Sidious, 266, big number. That's a really big number, but it's got the uncirculated designation, which is tough to do, especially for these foil Ultimate Galactic Hunt. And that's going to be kind of the running theme here. Here was another one. This is the Magna Guard. This was a punched example. So as we talked about the standard release non-foil version of Magna Guard, there are very select, rare, unpunched examples. We've talked about them on the channel. I think one of them hit like something crazy, like $800. I mean, it was a big number. This one was a punched example, but it was also an uncirculated 9.0. That one sold for $197.50. $197. There was I think there was an unpunched example that was not graded that sold for $420 earlier this year. So this one sold for less than half that, and you're getting the uncirculated designation, but it is punched versus unpunched. But pretty nice looking card there. Here was a punched example of the General Grievous, but again, uncirculated 9.0. Tough to get VC17 in an uncirculated designation. That one sold for $204, but which I think is reasonable. I think that's a pretty good price, really, because ungraded, this one can go for what, $125 or so in a punched example. So uncirculated 9.0 for $204, that's a price I'd pay all day long for it. But here was a big one. This one was an uncirculated foil example of General Grievous. That one sold for $400. So that just shows you there's a massive premium for that uncirculated designation, especially for the foils. And as crazy as that number is, I've got an even better one here. This is it. An uncirculated 9.25 VC09 foil Boba Fett. That one sold for $660. $660. That is a massive, massive number. And I think I might have had this in a what to buy video last week, but man, they really brought the bids on that one. 32 bids. That one just closed 2 days ago as of the making of this video. But uncirculated 9.25 foil Boba Fett with the rocket firing Boba Fett offer, which is common for, I mean, that's what all of these foils do have. But $660. Wow, that is a gulp kind of number. Next up, we've got Power Droid. He always has nice uncirculated graded TVC. This is the First Order Stormtrooper, graded uncirculated 9.5. Again, a very high grade. That one sold for $134. He had an uncirculated 9.25 Scarif Trooper. That one sold for $154, which is another big number. He also had the Imperial Assault Tank Driver in an uncirculated 9.0. That's a beautiful looking card back. Obviously, the driver and the commander command big money, even ungraded. That one sold for $152. So big numbers there. He also had an uncirculated 9.0 unpunched original issue Shea Vizsla. Now, as we've talked about, the Shea Vizsla has really dropped in price since the new reissues happened, but this one did not. This one did not because it's uncirculated. It's a 9.0 unpunched, and it sold for $262.50, which is, it's still lower than where something like this would have sold before the reissue was announced. It was hitting like $350 or so in high grade, already graded, but $262 is still a big number and much higher than where this one is selling for in near mint plus condition ungraded. So, I mean, I'd say 125, 150 max is what you can get this for, unpunched, the original issue, ungraded. But an uncirculated 9.0 still commands the big money, $262.50 plus $19 shipping. This seller had some interesting ones. This has the redemption certificate for that mail-away rocket firing Fett, and it's AFA graded 8.5, but this is kind of a custom case that AFA did, and you don't usually see AFA stooping down to be willing to work with customers to do these custom cases like this, but they did it, and it's an 8.5 rocket firing Fett with the redemption certificate enclosed inside. That one sold for $222.25. I thought that was a pretty good price for a nice one. He also had an 85 plus grade Grogu. This is the Razor Crest pack-in with the chrome prom. Beautiful looking example, AFA 85 plus with an archival case as well. That one sold for $167.50. We've talked about this one, in near mint plus condition ungraded. You can probably pick it up for $75 to $80, but $167.50 for an AFA 85 plus. Same seller also had an archival case, 85 plus Razor Crest Pack-In Off-World Jawa Elder. That one sold for $109.26, which I thought that was a really good deal, given that this one's, what, 60 to 70 bucks ungraded. You get an 85 plus grade example for, you know, basically the cost of a mint on card that hasn't been graded, plus grading costs, and you know it's probably even more expensive, honestly. If you were to buy one ungraded, send it into AFA to get graded, plus the shipping cost to and from, I don't think you could do it for $119 shipped like you got this one for. So pretty good deal on that one. Next up was a 9.25 uncirculated prototype FET. That one sold for $189.71 free shipping. So it's about right. It seems like for high-grade prototype FETs, that they've come back down in price again. $175 to $200 is about the going rate, and that's a pretty high score, 9.25 uncirculated. Next up, I have one of those 9-packs. So this is 3 of the special action figure sets, all inside that Target exclusive massive box. This seller had 2 of them available. One of them did sell for $175 plus $12.53 shipping. So I don't know how you're going to ship that for 12 bucks, but that's what he charged. So $175 plus $12, and he apparently still has one more available. So that's an interesting one. And then finally, we had the Carbon Freezing Chamber SDCC exclusive. Another one of these did sell. This one was listed for $969 plus $179 shipping. And the best offer that was accepted was $873 plus $179 shipping. So over $1,000 still. I don't know if that buyer, when he made that offer, if he recognized that it was $180 shipping. So maybe that wasn't what he was charged, but that's what it was quoted for me anyway. But $873 was the best offer that was accepted on that one. So anyway, lots of interesting information out there as it pertains to the vintage collection. Lots of high-grade examples sold for big boy prices. And good luck to all of you out there looking to complete your collection. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll be back soon.